Hi, friends. Well, one of the things that we often hear during this pandemic is that we are all in this together. And while that may gloss over the fact that some of us are in far more risk than others, it does point to the fact that every person has been affected in one way or another by this pandemic. We have all experienced losses. Mine may be different from yours, but we are all grieving. We all have this feeling of disorientation because our world has been turned upside down. The things we thought we could count on are not certain anymore. And we need to face our brokenness, the brokenness in our hearts. We need to find ways to mourn our losses, and we need to give ourselves permission to grieve. The Psalms of Lament, like Psalm 13 last week, are a great place to start. And lament simply means an expression of grief. Now, Psalm 13 provided a framework for praying in times of trouble. It began with an honest impatient complaint about God. It featured a cry for help, or one might even say a demand for help, and ended in affirmations of trust in God. Today we're going to look at a few verses of Psalm 69, and I'm using this psalm because the images in the beginning verses of this psalm I find are very helpful as I try to face my grief and brokenness in this moment. So I invite you to close your eyes as I read this and to listen for the metaphors, the images that he uses to express what he is experiencing in trouble. Listen now to God's word. Save me, O God, for the waters have come up to my neck. I sink in the miry depths where there is no foothold. I have come into the deep waters. The floods engulf me. I am worn out calling for help. My throat is parched. My eyes fail looking for my God. Do any of these images grab you as you reflect on the times in which we are living? Drowning, sinking with no foothold, that certainly seems relevant. Parched and worn out. These images invite us to give voice to the grief and brokenness that we are experiencing and to throw our desperations at the feet of our faithful God. You know, when we do this, we are admitting that all that is in our hearts is beyond our ability to solve or control. Really, when we throw our desperations at the feet of God, it is a radical sign of hope. Hope in the one who holds the whole world in his hands. Preacher Otis Moss tells the story of a rabbi who was asked, why does God allow our hearts to break? And the story goes on, and the rabbi finally answers, God allows our heart to break so God can fill the cracks. Or as Leonard Cohen says, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Neither of this is to by any means saying that God is causing this pandemic. But it is when we hit rock bottom, as another saying goes, you hit the rock, who is Christ. I think one of the spiritual tasks for us during this time is to acknowledge what is breaking in our hearts. We need to confess the cracks and our inability to make things right on our own. The psalmist asks God to answer him and gives voice to his trust in the goodness and faithfulness of God. And I find this language also helpful for me as I try to pray. So listen now, I will begin and read some verses beginning at verse 13. But as for me, my prayer is to you, O Lord. At an acceptable time, O God, in the abundance of your steadfast love, answer me. With your faithful help, rescue me from sinking in the mire. Let me be delivered from my enemies and from the deep waters. Do not let the flood sweep over me, or the deep swallow me up, or the pit close its mouth over me. Answer me, O Lord, for your steadfast love is good. I invite you this week to pray this psalm. Stop and linger over the words or images that grab you and allow that to draw you deeper into your own prayers to God. And I pray that this psalm may help you and me to throw our grief and our brokenness and our desperations and sense of being out of control at the feet of our good and faithful and gracious God. I'll see you next week.